Let's face it, we can all get stuck in a victim mindset sometimes. But I want to share with you today some tips and tricks to get you out of the victim mindset as quickly as possible to actually empower yourself rather than give all your power away to this person, situation, or thing that's actually draining you. Because many people struggle with this victim mindset and often get stuck in that mindset without even realizing it. And essentially all this victim mindset is when we get involved in negative thinking patterns where we perceive ourselves to be powerless to this external thing that's happened. And again, I can think of multiple times in my life where this has happened, especially before I struggled with my mental health. It's something that I noticed I got caught up in a lot. I was always the victim of situations. And I've shared stories on the podcast multiple times where I've realized now in the place that I'm at that for pretty much my entire life, when I told stories back, I was always the victim. It's always someone else's fault without actually taking any responsibility. And once I actually did the tips and tricks I'm going to give you today, it massively helped me actually take back control and repower myself. It's actually helped me become the person I am today and actually accept the role that I've played in situations where I thought I was the victim and actually I wasn't. I had a lot more things I could take responsibility for, and when I took responsibility for them, it helped me grow massively. So for me, when we get into this negative thought pattern, it can lead to a negative spiral of emotions, and it can really hinder our development within relationships, within friendship groups, when it comes to business, work, relationships, finances, whatever it is. If we disempower ourselves by thinking we're a victim of life, we are completely disempowered. We put all the power outside of ourselves. When actually, if you've been studying the podcast for any amount of time, you realize that actually you have a lot more power than you think. Some of the amazing guests that I've had on, their transformation came when they realized that they had the power. We've had some people who have gone through some horrendous things. And once they actually took any sort of responsibility, they retook their power back, and that's when the growth happened. That's when the transformation happened, and that's what I want to happen for you. So again, first point here, number one, is recognize when you actually get caught in this negative spiral or this victim mindset. And again, some common signs of this could be you're constantly blaming other people or external circumstances for your problems. Is it always someone else's fault? Now, again, if you're not someone that goes straight to this default setting, I bet you know someone that does. I bet you know someone that it's always someone else's fault. Always. It's a problem situation. It's the government. It's the economy. It's this. It's that. Always blaming other people. It's never their fault. And they constantly feel helpless or they feel overwhelmed by challenges. Now, this is a key one because, again, it's not always just saying it's something external. It could be we feel helpless or overwhelmed with challenges. We just feel hopeless. We don't believe that we can do anything. We're disempowering ourselves. Or replaying past grievances that have happened to us without trying to seek solutions. So we're replaying this thing in the past and we just keep replaying it, and we're not looking for solutions. We're essentially bullying ourselves because remember, the brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality. So every single time you're replaying that past grievance, your brain thinks you're reliving it. So again, you'll notice your emotions, you start to feel negative. And what's happening is you're replaying it. You're reliving that experience over and over again. And especially if you're stuck in this negative thought pattern, you're seeing it from an even more negative light than it actually happened. How many times have you been in a situation and something negative's happened to someone, and then maybe you hear them tell the story 5 or 6 times, and each time they retell that story, they're a bit more hard done by. The reason is because they're stuck inside their own head. And every single time they're putting more negative emotions into it, and it's tinting and changing how they actually see things. Maybe this is you. I know I've definitely been guilty of this in the past. So how can we then actually shift out of this mindset? So the second part here is, number 2, taking responsibility and ownership. Like placing blame externally leads to this cycle of disempowerment, as we mentioned, and more importantly, frustration. When we disempower ourselves, thinking we can't do anything about a situation, it's going to lead to us feeling frustrated. And essentially what happens here is we play the blame game, and it just stops personal development completely because there's no accountability, there's no growth, there's no awareness, there's no progress, and we get caught in the same cycle. Pain plus reflection equals progress. I think I mentioned this on last week's video. Pain plus reflection equals progress. If you're just stuck in the pain without doing any reflection, if you're stuck in the pain, you're stuck in victim disempowering mode. And you keep reliving the pain. There is no reflection, therefore there is no progress. You're just stuck there in the pain. It's always someone else's fault. It's so disempowering and so crippling. And the more you get stuck in that negative thought spiral, more negative thoughts come in and the darker and deeper it goes. Get yourself out of it. Snap yourself out of it. So how can we actually do this, and how can we actually start to take some ownership of this? Number 1, just acknowledge the role that you played in your life, in this experience. Because no matter what happened, no matter if it was 99% that other person's fault, okay, Well, you can take responsibility for that 1%. And you could blame the government, you could blame lockdowns, you could blame all these things. Okay. But what part of that can you take responsibility for? Because whether it's your business failing or your relationship failing, whatever it is, you need to start to take responsibility, because this is the problem. Once you start to take responsibility, you realize that you have the power to change it. You take back power. That's so empowering. It's not on somebody else. You can actually do something about it. I realized my relationship broke down. Yes, my ex-partner was this, she was that, blah, 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 blah. But actually, I did this. And wow, I can really see now how that actually had a knock-on effect and caused all this. So then if I change this, next time I go into a relationship, or I want to maybe get back with my ex-partner, I change this, it completely changes the dynamic of the relationship. So powerful. Number two of this taking ownership. So number one was acknowledge your role you played. Number two, accept that while you can't control everything, you have control over your response. Two things you have control over: your thoughts and your actions. You have complete control of your thoughts. I've done podcasts on this again, whether you are aware of it or not. You have control of your thoughts and your actions. They are the two things that you can 100% control. Now, again, just because I've told you that doesn't mean it's just simple and easy like that. Like, it's very, very simple, but it's not easy. It's a very simple concept to take control of your thoughts and your actions, but it's not easy, especially if you've been programmed a certain way to do certain things. It's like that vinyl record. Again, for those that know, the vinyl record, you put the needle on, it spins around in a groove. If you've been stuck in that one groove, it's very, very hard to get out of that groove. Again, I understand it's not easy, but it's very, very simple once you understand it. And number three, recognize the power of your choice and decisions in shaping your life. Cause and effect. Every thought and action that you take is a cause. What is the effect? If you don't like the effects in your life, just take a step back and be like, right, what is the cause? What actions have I taken here? It's so empowering. Just take a look back in your life right now. Just think of something maybe has gone completely wrong. Maybe it's a business or a relationship that broke down. Just start to, rather than blame the other person, take responsibility and ask yourself, wow, okay, like where can I see that my communication broke down? Where can I see that I started to build up some resentment? So again, what's resentment? Essentially in relationships, normally what happens is like you hold your tongue a little bit. You don't express how you're feeling. Your communication's poor. You don't set boundaries. And you build up resentment until one day you kind of like just let it all out and it leads into a big argument. And then they hold resentment towards you, and it's a game of back and forth. Cause and effect. If you don't like the effect, go back and look at the cause. And again, second part of this, because the first part here was taking ownership, then how do we then shift responsibility? So number one, identify the areas in your life where you tend to blame external factors. So is there a common area where you start to blame other people? Is it to do with business? Is it to do with finances? Is it to do with relationships? Is it always your ex-partner's fault? Was it always your ex-boss's fault? If you've left 5 jobs and it's always your ex-boss's fault, I've got a newsflash, you are the problem, not your boss. So again, start to notice patterns. Number 2, challenge the blame into an introspective question of how could I have responded differently? How could I have responded differently in certain situations? Is there something that I could have changed? Again, empowering, actually taking the power back. And number 3, practice reframing the situation from a proactive perspective. Just reframe it. Just look at it differently. What would have happened if I'd shown up differently? What would have happened? What would the positive outcome have been? Again, this is now the reflection. You've had the pain. This is the reflection. This is how you make progress. Now, the third part of this whole thing, so again, quick recap here because we've covered a lot. The first part is you've got to recognise that you get yourself in that victim mindset. Number 2, you've got to take responsibility and ownership. And we've spoken about each one. How do you take ownership and how do you take responsibility? And the third one I'm going to share with you after I get you to subscribe. Click the subscribe button, or if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcast, make sure you hit the follow button. And again, if you've taken any value from today's episode, don't forget to like and share it with a friend. So point number 3 is building resilience. Building resilience. This is what helps you learn and grow. I talk to my clients about being a weed, not an orchid. Orchids are beautiful plants, but they need the perfect conditions. You're never going to have perfect conditions. Life is going to happen to you. So you need to be like a weed. You need to thrive and survive. Life is going to keep punching you. And again, as Rocky Balboa said, it's not about how hard you get hit, it's about how hard you can get back up again, or something along those lines. Probably messed that quote up. Probably should have researched it. That was on the fly. But 2 quotes I did come up with on here is Chumbawamba. You get knocked down, get back up again. When life hits you, get back up again. That is what it's all about. That is what resilience is all about. I feel like nowadays we haven't really built up that resilience muscle. When stuff happens, don't allow yourself to go default into that negative mindset. Take back power. Keep getting back up again. Because things happen, but you are in control of your response. That is what it's all about here. The whole thing is that you are in control of your response. Yes, it may not be fair. It may not have been your fault. But I want you to keep moving forward with your life, and this is what it's all about. Hope you're taking value from today's episode. I'll see you guys next week. Take it easy.